In 1951, two policemen, knock and steal, investigate the mathematician Alan Turing after an apparent break-in in his home. During his interrogation by Knock, Turing tells of his time working at Bletchley Park during the Second World War. In 1928, the young Turing is unhappy and bullied at boarding school. He develops a friendship with Christopher Morcom, who sparks his interest in cryptography. Turing develops romantic feelings for him, but Christopher soon dies from tuberculosis. When Britain declares war on Germany in 1939, Turing travels to Bletchley Park. Under the direction of Commander Alistair Denniston, he joins the cryptography team of Hugh Alexander, John Cairncross, Peter Hilton, Keith Furman, and Charles Richards. They've got their hands on an actual Enigma machine smuggled out of Berlin, but they don't know the machine settings to decode messages. Every night at midnight, the Germans refresh the settings. Alan says all the messages are floating in the air for anyone to grab. The problem is that they are encrypted and there are 159 millions of possibilities. It will take 20 million years to try everything. The team is trying to analyze the Enigma machine, which the Nazis used to send coded messages. Turing is difficult to work with and considers his colleagues inferior. He works alone to design a machine to decipher Enigma messages. Returning to 1939, Alan complains to Commander Denniston that Hugh Alexander has denied funding for the parts he needs to build a machine. The commander tells him the other code breakers do not get along with him and he should take up the complaint with someone else. Alan suggests firing them all and using the funds for his machine. He says he only needs £100,000 and that only a machine can defeat another machine. Alan asks who the commander's commanding officer is. He is told Winston Churchill. Alan sends a letter to the Prime Minister via Stuart Menzies. Churchill puts Alan in charge, overriding Hugh's authority. Alan immediately fires two of his teammates, Keith and Charles, calling them mediocre linguists and poor code breakers. Alan places a difficult crossword in newspapers to find replacements. The handful that manage to solve the puzzle are gathered together to take a test. One young woman, Joan Clark, a Cambridge graduate, shows up late because her bus had a flat tire. He tasks the room to solve a very difficult puzzle in 6 minutes that took Alan himself 8 minutes. Surprising them all, Joan solves it in 5.5. She passes Turing's test, but her parents will not allow her to work with the male cryptographers. Turing arranges for her to live and work with the female clerks who intercept the messages and shares his plans with her. With Clark's help, Turing warms to the other colleagues, who begin to respect him. Turing's machine, which he names Christopher, is constructed, but cannot determine the Enigma encryption settings quickly enough. The Germans reset them each day. Denniston orders it to be destroyed and Turing fired, but the other cryptographers threaten to leave if Turing goes. Joan comes home to find Alan there, using her flat to try to solve mathematical equations. She interrupts Alan to tell him that she has to return home. Her parents are unhappy with her being 25 years old and unmarried. He suggests she get married. She suspects he is suggesting Hugh or Peter, but of course he means himself. He proposes with a piece of electrical wire, rode into the ring. During their engagement party, Turing confirms his homosexuality to Cairncross, who warns him to keep it secret. After overhearing a conversation with a female clerk about messages she receives from the same German coder, Turing has an epiphany, realizing he can program the machine to decode words he already knows exist in certain messages. One German coder always opens his first message with the standard plain-text German script. That reveals enough of the day's Enigma code that Christopher can quickly decode all the day's messages. After he recalibrates the machine, it quickly decodes a message and the cryptographers celebrate. They learn the convoy is about to be attacked, but Turing realizes that if they suddenly reroute the convoy and attack the U-boats, the Germans will realize Enigma is compromised and change the machinery. Therefore, the team at Bletchley Park cannot act on every decoded message and choose not to save the convoy, despite desperate pleas from Peter, whose brother is a sailor serving on one of the ships. Turing creates a statistical model to indicate which warnings to send to maximize destruction and minimize discovery. Turing discovers that Cairncross is a Soviet spy. When Turing confronts him, Cairncross argues that the Soviets are allies working for the same goals, and threatens to retaliate by disclosing Turing's sexuality. When the top MI6 agent Stuart Menzies appears to threaten Clark, Turing reveals that Cairncross is a spy. Menzies reveals he knew this already and planted the messages carrying cross leaks to the Soviets for British benefit. Fearing for her safety, Turing tells Clark to leave Bletchley Park, revealing that he is a homosexual. Clark states she always suspected but insists they would have been happy together anyway. Turing then tells her he never cared for her, and only used her for her cryptography skills. Heartbroken, she decides to stay anyway, deeming this the single most important task she will undertake, and she now refuses to cow to what Turing or her parents want her to do, or think of her decisions. Alan says that, every day, they decoded messages and the war wasn't determined by the bombings and fighting but by a team of 6 crossword enthusiasts in a tiny village in England. We see everyone celebrating on VE Day, May 8, 1945. Menzies tells the group that before they can return to their lives at university, they have to burn all evidence that they cracked Enigma because it may be used again in future wars. They also have to pretend they have never met one another. In 1952, Turing is convicted of gross indecency and, in lieu of a prison sentence, undergoes chemical castration so he can continue his work. Clark visits him in his home and witnesses his physical and mental deterioration. She comforts him by saying that his work saved millions of lives. He tells her she got what she wanted: work, husband, a normal life. Joan tells him no one normal could have done what they did. That morning, she was on a train that went through a city that would not have existed if it wasn't for Alan. She is glad he wasn't born normal. She tells him, the world is an infinitely better place precisely because you weren't normal. The epilogue reveals that after a year of government-mandated hormonal therapy, Turing died by suicide on June 7, 1954. In 2013, Queen Elizabeth II granted Turing a posthumous royal pardon, honoring his work which would eventually go on to create the modern computer. Historians estimate that breaking Enigma shortened the war by more than 2 years, saving over 14 million lives. It remained a government-held secret for more than 50 years. Turing's work inspired generations of research into what scientists call Turing machines, now known as computers.